How does a scene actually evolve in the cutting room? How many versions does it go through before it becomes the fine cut? Now, outside of the director and maybe a handful of senior producers, the hundreds of tiny decisions that a professional editor makes are never seen by anyone. So in this first episode of Scene Evolutions, you're going to see that hidden process, how a sequence moves from a rough assembly of interview dialogue through to B-roll positioning, pacing, and music, all the way up to final cut. Okay, this is Tony. Tony is a Californian photographer who does a very specific type of photography. He only shoots cities at dawn, that short but magical time in the morning when no one is around and the light is amazing. So, the scene we're going to look at is quite early on in the documentary, and its purpose is to really show the audience Tony's motivation as to why he does this. We want to get our viewers inside his head. Now, we'll start off with the foundation of many scene structures, the dialogue assembly, just pulling the character's raw interview footage down onto the timeline in a rough structure. Okay, so let's start at the beginning and watch the sync assembly. Here we go.
It took me a while to realize that, what is it? I was kidding, why am I so into shooting cities in the morning? Why am I getting out of my bed, leaving the house, putting on a heavy camera bag and going out and doing this? It's not just to take pictures, but it's to have that experience of, peacefulness. It's very centering for me, like, being out in nature. Everybody else is asleep. And I'm out here in the big, busy city, basically by myself, and the city's an empty canvas. No cars, no people, no noise. And it's like being out in, it's like being out in the woods, in the middle of a forest, calm and peaceful. And it's something that is a rare moment in the city. Just being very quiet. It was just, I just like quiet. I really like peace and serenity, give you a chance for your mind to clear and to be able to think. The ability to, the environment to induce thinking. It becomes a very kind of personal, emotional, experience. It's rapturous sometimes. It really is for me. Because beauty is healing. There's no other way around it. You can philosophize about it all you want, but beauty heals. And to take the moment to appreciate it is healing.
Okay, so what do we think? Well, here's the first question that I always ask myself is there a scene here? Is there enough dialogue to sustain a progressive scene? Does it have a start, a middle, and an end? And the answer is yes. I think we've got a pretty good scene here. It's starting off pretty well around here. So essentially, he's asking the question here, and then progressively, as we move through the sequence, he's getting more and more detailed and more emotional. The whole premise is we want to kind of make the audience fall in love or get kind of seduced by Tony's way of seeing the world. It's a romantic scene. It's an emotional scene. It's got to have things in it that specifically draw the audience in to his perception. We start off at the beginning, and he's kind of asking questions, which is a really great way to start off a scene. Why do I do this? That's a classic way to start a documentary scene. Why do I do this? Well, I'm going to tell you why. And obviously the contract that we've got with the audience is if you want to know why, then you have to watch the scene. So it draws them in to the scene. And then he gets a lot more emotional around here. So I think this is a good work in progress. Assemblies are just assemblies. They're not even structured, in terms of performance and stuff like that. They're just, do we have a scene here? So what's wrong with this then? Let's ask that question. Well, definitely what's wrong with it is there's no crafting. The speed of his dialogue has not been crafted yet at all. There's a lot of mistakes. There's a lot of ums and ers and coughs and he's repeating himself as well. We've got stuff like this around here. Look at that. We've got big pauses within his delivery. But we're not concerned about that right now. What we're concerned about is does it tick all those boxes? Definitely, we've got a scene here for sure. Now, we're going to craft it. We're going to tighten it up. We're going to take out all the mistakes. We're going to do a refined sync cut. So here we go.
Why am I so into shooting cities in the morning? Why am I getting out of my bed, leaving the house, putting on a heavy camera bag and going out and doing this? Why am I so into shooting cities in the morning? Why am I getting out of my bed, leaving the house, putting on a heavy camera bag and going out and doing this? It's not just to take pictures, but it's to have that experience of, peacefulness. It's very centering for me. I'm out here in the big, busy city, basically by myself. No cars, no people, no noise. It's like being out in the woods, in the middle of a forest. It's calm and peaceful. And it's something that is a rare moment in the city. I just like quiet. I really like peace and serenity, Give you a chance for your mind to clear and to be able to think. It becomes a very kind of personal, emotional experience. It's rapturous sometimes. It really is for me. You can philosophize about it all you want, but, beauty heals.
Okay, so what do we notice? What has changed in this cut? Well, first of all, it's a lot tighter. So all of the repetitions have been taken out. All the ums and the ers and the clumsy dialogue and the coughs and stuff like that. We've pulled all the air out and we've tightened it right down. So we're starting to craft the delivery in terms of what we're allowing the audience to see. And if you just look here as well, so what I've done is I've actually divided them into what I call sync islands. And I've color-coded each one so you can see. So each one of these sync islands has a very specific purpose to the narrative. And that's the kind of like cause and effect and checks and balances we have when we're designing a sequence. Okay, does this lead to this? And does this lead to this? And does this lead to this? The worst thing in any sequence is you just start talking about any kind of random stuff out there. And I've put a second of space in between each one. But essentially, the whole premise now is a lot less cloudy. Mostly to do with the performance, but also any kind of redundant lines. Like if you saw at the start, I literally came in with the question. So as we're editing this and we're getting tighter and more clear and there's no fat on the bone, as it were, this is becoming a lot more clearer. It's like pulling into focus. Oh, okay, I understand what this scene is now. Which is really cool. And it's always a lovely process to go through. So now that we've done all this, the next thing is the B-roll. Okay, here we go.
Wow. We're in Paris. Look at it, it's gorgeous.
Okay, so there's the B-roll comp. So what was I thinking about in terms of selecting and pulling out from the rushes, from the raw footage, the specific shots here? Well, certainly a primary thing amongst them was a lot of what Tony's talking about in the dialogue, in the sync cut, is around this idea of being by himself in the city. So what's a good way of showing that? So a great way of showing that is wide shots, mid shots and wide shots in places that, are very famous kind of locations within a city. In this case, it's Paris. But if you have a wider shots, coupled with these beautiful locations, you get this kind of sense of isolation that Tony's by himself. Not all wide shots, a sequence with wide shot to wide shot to wide shot would just be, it wouldn't work at all. It'd be a bit weird. So there are obviously selective medium shots and close-up shots in there, but the distribution and percentage of those is kind of less. Let's look at some of these as well. A lot of the shots that I've chosen, they're very kind of symmetrical and cinematic. So these are these kind of wider shots, this tiny figure in the frame. And then you've got Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. Beautiful, beautiful light, beautiful building. Obviously been there for like 800-900 years. Absolutely stunning. So if you see the percentages of, how I'm going into these mids and stuff like that, it's mostly wide shots with some mids and one or two close-ups. And then we've got a couple of revelation shots here as well. So look at these as well. Let me just mute these. So, this is a classic revelation shot. We've got Sacré-Cœur here, and we're revealing Paris. That's a great one. And then we've got one here, which is where he's walking along here, and we're revealing the Eiffel Tower. There's not a lot of progressive action in terms of he's going on a specific journey. It's more kind of pulled out beauty shots and cinematic shots with the dawn and stuff like that. So it's a lot more about psychology based on what he's saying, as opposed to, hey, I'm going to take you on a specific linear journey of action across a morning. So the visual strategy was definitely more wider shots for isolation and mid shots when he's doing his craft, and the occasional close-up shot. So now we want to see how these shots are going to be placed, positioned in and around our dialogue arc. Okay, so let's go and watch the rough cut.
Why am I so into shooting cities in the morning? Why am I getting out of my bed, leaving the house, putting on a heavy camera bag and going out and doing this?
We're in Paris. Look at it, it's gorgeous.
It's not just to take pictures, but it's to have that experience of, peacefulness. It's very centering for me. I'm out here in the big, busy city, basically by myself. No cars, no people, no noise. It's like being out in the woods, in the middle of a forest. It's calm and peaceful. And it's something that is a rare moment in the city. I just like quiet. I really like peace and serenity, Give you a chance for your mind to clear and to be able to think. It becomes a very kind of personal, emotional experience. It's rapturous sometimes. It really is for me. You can philosophize about it all you want, but, beauty heals.
Okay, so there we go. Now, what is the most apparent thing that we can spot in this rough cut? Is it finished? Definitely not. There's a whole bunch of stuff we could do to it, but we're placing the images in and around the sync cut. But the first and most apparent thing here is, look, the distribution and breaking up of these sync islands to create space in between what he's actually saying. B-roll everyone knows B-roll has a couple of different purposes. A, it's here to, illustrate what the character's talking about. B, it's here to hide jump cuts within the sync. You can see that. So we're hiding the jump cuts, obviously. But not a lot of people talk about the third purpose or use of B-roll. Certainly, it's much more of an editorial thing than a shooting and directing thing. And that is, it's also here to create space in between the sync islands. You see? One of the worst things that we could do as editors is have our characters go blah, 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 end of scene, the end. It just doesn't work like that. The way you design dialogue, there's multiple things going on at once, but, you got to think about it kind of like machine gun burst. Brr, stop, pause, brr, stop, pause, brr, stop, pause. And so certainly with emotional or complex dialogue, you want to create space after that. And so B-roll, obviously you insert B-roll that's connected in some way at that point or in the progressive pictorial arc at that point in the story. But essentially, we definitely want to take this idea of him talking in bursts and giving space, especially if some of these, when we transition from one sync island to another, we're kind of pausing and resetting the ear for the audience. So, let's look at the progressive nature of these pictures. First of all, we're establishing the city at pre-dawn, as it were. Then there's the river, the Seine River, beautiful lighting, symmetrical shots. And then, we've got another one of the traffic. No one's there on the streets. We've got these beautiful cinematic light. And then we introduce the character. And we even let him say, hey, we're in Paris. So that's a nice, kind of observational cue for the audience to say, oh, okay, this is where we are. So that's the revelation shot there. And of course, we've got our other revelation shot. Where is it? Here. We're revealing the Eiffel Tower. But we're revealing here. So, this is a classic way to get into a scene. You have the character walk towards camera. And then, of course, at the end, you do the opposite. You have the character walk away from camera. Think about how many Hollywood films have you seen? The last shot is crane shot and the characters walk off into the distance, or the character walks off into the distance. It's not every film, but it's visual grammar that's been around for, 100+ years in our art form. And so the construction of the start and the end has these kind of like bookends, as it were, visual bookends that will be easily digestible for the audience. And then we've got, these, when he's starting to talk about isolation and he's by himself, we've got these wider shots here. He starts talking about nature. So I just put some shots of pigeons, him watching pigeons in there. Anyone who knows anything about the geography of Paris knows that this is actually shot by the Eiffel Tower, and that's at Sacré-Cœur. So there's different parts of Paris, but because he looked up at something, I cut those in there. So that's a bit of a cheat, but and then, this part here, which I think is really beautiful, which is he starts talking about it's a personal emotional experience. When a character's talking, and they start talking about their inner world, what are we going to do? We're going to go for a close-up. We've got this close-up profile as well. Close-up profiles, you don't kind of see all of the face, so there's a bit of mystery there, which is nice than a kind of 3/4 on or a straight on. So that's kind of beautiful as well. So he's talking about a personal emotional experience, and we're tight in, so the audience is with them as they say that. So, yeah, it's a rough positioning. It's kind of ticking all the boxes that we want. The dialogue is leading us to what we want to say in the pictures. So the selection process that we talked about in the previous sequence with the B-roll comp is I'm much more interested in wides and mids at certain key points, the 2 or 3 revelation shots with the pans where we reveal something. And, there's like one close-up in the whole sequence, and it's positioned at that point for a very specific psychological reason. And of course, we've created this space in between here. So we have this structured delivery that happens in bursts. And therefore, every time the character stops talking, you get a chance, the audience gets a chance to process that information. A lot of the time, unscripted characters don't know themselves what is profound. And so when someone talks about something emotional or something complex, we want to pause and push it down like we talked about. So yeah, I'd call this a rough cut. And this is something that I could show to the director and say, yeah, we've got a scene here. But they may want to see it with music. So let's watch a scored version. And of course, all the same kind of theory applies with music. I'm looking for something which matches the tone and the emotions of what he's saying. So let's watch a cut with music now. Okay, so let's get rid of our rough cut and let's load in our scored sequence. So this time we'll watch it full screen because I really want you to get the emotional impact to this. Okay, here we go.
Why am I so into shooting cities in the morning? Why am I getting out of my bed, leaving the house, putting on a heavy camera bag and going out and doing this?
We're in Paris. Look at it, it's gorgeous.
It's not just to take pictures, but it's to have that experience of, peacefulness. It's very centering for me. I'm out here in the big, busy city, basically by myself. No cars, no people, no noise. It's like being out in the woods, in the middle of a forest, calm and peaceful. And it's something that is a rare moment in the city. I just like quiet. I really like peace and serenity, Give you a chance for your mind to clear and to be able to think. It becomes a very kind of personal, emotional experience. It's rapturous sometimes, it really is for me. You can philosophize about it all you want, but beauty heals.
Okay, so what do we think? Well, I actually had to do quite a lot to this track. I had to chop it up quite a bit. So you'll notice that the start, I've actually looped the start because I wanted it to start off softer. So I actually took the end. The start of the track is actually the end, and I looped it underneath. And then I chose this moment here to bring the beat in.
Very centering for me.
So that's, a specific timing that we need, where are we going to bring in certain elements within the music? A music track isn't just like put down on the bottom tracks and we find the tone and the emotion that matches and then forget about it. Absolutely not. We take as much care and attention and crafting to the music as we do with every other aspect. So I've chopped this up quite a lot and I've chosen the moment where the beat comes in. And I've timed it so that the beat actually goes within the track towards the end, at the end of here. Like, listen to this.
Beauty heals.
So that's quite a lot of design with the music, some tracks, they'll fit really well, but some tracks you really have to chop them up and start rearranging them completely. Obviously, if you've got stems as well, that can help. But the timings that happen in your sequence are very rarely going to match the timings that are naturally occurring in the music. But music is mathematical, so you can chop it up. B-roll and dialogue isn't. Music is in bars, 4s, 8s, 16s, and all that kind of stuff. So I looped it here. I chose a moment to come in on the beat, and then I chose that moment to stop the beat. And then, of course, I did a nice little trick here, which people often do, which is nice, which is cut to black, not fade to black, cut to it on the beat. And sometimes that's nice, especially variation across the end of scenes, across a whole film, 10, 20, 30, 40 scenes across, a 30-minute, a 60-minute, or a 90-minute film. So essentially, the track is nice. I like the chord structure. It's got this kind of mystery. It's got this slightly melancholic, but also inspiring structure. When you're auditioning music, you're always sitting there thinking, okay, does this match the tone and the emotions of what our character's talking about? And so I really, really do like this track in terms of that. But it's always nice to give the director, an alternative. You say, look, I think this is nice, but maybe we can do better. What do you think? Because we can change the emotional tone slightly. And despite what I love about this track, it might just be a bit too busy, and the beat coming in and it being kind of swelling, certainly in this area here in the middle part of the track. Obviously that's more, less beats and here as well. That it might just be a bit too intense. Sometimes a track is not everything. It might have a great chord structure, but some instrument might come in. You're like, oh, that doesn't quite match. Or the beat's too heavy, or there's not enough beat, or there's a moment in the scene that you need to change something for an emotional reason, and the track doesn't support that. And so we have to be aware of this when we're auditioning music. So I've done an alternative version. And directors love this, producers love this. Don't just give them one, give them a couple of versions, because it makes us look good. So let me know what you think of this one. We'll watch it full screen again so you can really get the emotions of what's going on.
Why am I so into shooting cities in the morning? Why am I getting out of my bed, leaving the house, putting on a heavy camera bag and going out and doing this?
We're in Paris. Look at it, it's gorgeous.
It's not just to take pictures, but it's to have that experience of, peacefulness. It's very centering for me. I'm out here in this big, busy city, basically by myself. No cars, no people, no noise. It's like being out in the woods, in the middle of a forest. It's calm and peaceful, and it's something that is a rare moment in the city. I just like quiet. I really like peace and serenity, Give you a chance for your mind to clear and to be able to think. It becomes a very kind of personal, emotional experience. It's rapturous sometimes. It really is for me. You can philosophize about it all you want, but, beauty heals.
Okay, what did you think? For me personally, I think that's a lot more subtle. I think it connects with the emotions of what Tony's saying. I think it fits in as well, much more with the this sense of isolation. It's a bit more melancholic. It's a bit less inspirational. So I think it really backs up and provides a lot more emotional strength to what we're trying to do with this sequence. And there's more strings in it. You know, they say in music theory, it's the strings, you know, like the violin and the cello. They're the kind of instruments that are most representative of human emotions. You know, that's why there's always a big, you know, in any film score or opera or piece of classical music, you know, sometimes the big emotions, a lot of the time they're made by the string instruments, which is, you know, it's really beautiful. So I think we're onto I prefer this one, but I would definitely show both versions to the director. And it's at a slower pace as well. So it kind of fits in, you know, with the solitude of the city. There's no one around. It's not bustling, the wide shots, the isolation. You know, there's a stack of things which is doing, I think, a little bit more than the previous sequence. I hope you've enjoyed this very first episode of Scene Evolutions, dear friend. Now, I've also got a very useful gift for your cutting room. It's a beautifully designed film poster I call the periodic table of editing terminology. 50 of the most used creative terms you'll ever hear in a professional edit suite. Just click on the link in the description below, head on over to InsideTheEdit.com and download it right now. There we go. A multi-stage process of building and refining the architecture and stylization of a scene. Now, let's go back and remind ourselves of the scene's intention. It was to illustrate to the audience Tony's motivation as to why he does this very specific type of photography. So, did we accomplish our goal? Well, I think we did. It's highly descriptive, very emotional, and has profound moments in it. The shot selection backs up the dialogue in a cinematic way, and we've got 2 scored versions to show the director, both of which have slightly different emotional outcomes. I'm fairly confident the audience will be intrigued enough to carry on watching the rest of the film. Thank you for your kind attention, dear friend. My name's Paddy Bird, and this is Inside the Edit.